The email showed up on a Tuesday mid-morning. It came without fanfare. No urgent subject line, no red flag, just a quiet line in my inbox, final transfer, Elm & Co. It was from Knox & Associates, the legal firm my father had worked with since the early days. I wasn't listed as the recipient, but someone had copied me in. Maybe by mistake, maybe not. Out of habit, I opened it. I didn't expect anything, certainly not what I found in paragraph 3. Effective January 1st, full operational control equity transfer and brand title of Elm & Co. will be reassigned to Ms. Chloe Ellison. I read it twice. Then once more, just to be sure I hadn't misunderstood. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere, not in the transfer, not in the acknowledgments, not even in the CC line. I wasn't overlooked. I was removed. I sat there for a long time, not in shock exactly. More like the moment after a sharp fall when your body hasn't started hurting yet, but you know it will. It didn't make sense. Or maybe it made too much sense. For the past 7 years, I'd lived and breathed that company. What started as a dusty dry goods store at the edge of Vermont had become a multi-million-dollar lifestyle brand. I built the product lines, hired the teams, sourced the packaging, created the supplier pipeline from scratch. The shift to certified organic, that was me. The rebrand, me. The new revenue model that kept us alive through COVID, also me. I still remember pitching the expansion strategy in our first investor meeting while my father sat 2 seats away saying nothing. Now it belonged to Chloe, my younger sister, the one who'd once said, "I don't get why you work so hard for soap." She came back 2 years ago from spiritual travel, took a few photos in front of the store, and somehow became head of community. At first I laughed. Then I stopped laughing when Dad started bringing her to calls. When she started speaking for the brand. "She's fresh," he told me once. The kind of energy investors notice. I gave him the numbers. He gave me a smile. That email, that quiet little email, was the confirmation I didn't ask for. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it. I just closed my laptop and stared at the wall behind it. One question wouldn't leave me. When exactly did they decide I no longer existed? And the one that hurt more. Why did they think I wouldn't fight back? I didn't reply to the email. I didn't forward it. I didn't even mention it to anyone. Instead, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years, the original archive I built when we were still calling it the shop, not a brand. Inside were early brand assets, PDFs, mock-ups, supplier contracts, handwritten timelines, copy drafts I'd written on flights and edited between shifts. It wasn't nostalgia. It was record-keeping. I'd always been the one who kept the paper trail. The first logo file was still there. I remembered drawing it on the back of a napkin at a coffee shop near the co-op after a buyer said our packaging felt too forgettable. I stayed up that night teaching myself Illustrator, trying to make something that looked like memory. Soft type A, curling ampersand like a root, simple grounded mine. Dad had said it looked a little handmade, but I convinced him to test it. It tripled our wholesale orders in under 3 months. I pulled up the current website. The ampersand was gone. So was everything else I recognized. New logo, new name, new tone. Under our journey, the story began in 2021. Not a single photo from before. Not a mention of our first storefront or the 5 years we spent loading boxes ourselves. Just Elma Studio was founded by Chloe Ellison as a space for intentional beauty and mindful design. I searched for my name. It wasn't there. I checked the blog archive. Media mentions the press section. Nothing. The interview I did with our first national stockist, gone. The local article where I explained our early product sourcing process, not linked. Even my quote about small rituals, the one that used to be printed on the inside flap of every box, replaced by a line from Chloe. "I want every product to feel like light in your hands." I opened Chloe's LinkedIn. She had updated her title, founder and CEO, Elma Studio. Public speaker, brand visionary. In one video clip, she held up the bar soap I spent 3 winters perfecting, the one we used to call Snow Day. She smiled and said, "This one's my favorite. I made it for my mom." I watched in silence as she described the scent like it came from her childhood, not mine. They hadn't just taken the business. They'd rewritten its origin story. And I wasn't just cut out, I was smoothed over. They'd lifted the language, the ideas, the textures, but not the fingerprints, not the parts that pointed back to me. I checked the brand's latest investor deck. In the milestone slide, the timeline started in 2021. It listed first major retail partnership, which I had negotiated in 2019. Sustainable pivot, which I had pitched during lockdown. The only thing new was the name. I thought back to something Dad once told me during a late-night strategy meeting. No one remembers who poured the concrete. They just see the windows. At the time, I thought he meant we were a team, that he was reminding me not to chase attention. Now I realized he'd been telling me the plan. He never intended to build the story around me, just on top of me. I didn't call my father. I didn't reply to Chloe's text. I didn't write a long email or request a meeting. I didn't ask why they erased me. I already knew. They didn't think I'd push back. They thought I'd do what I always did, let it go, work harder, carry the weight quietly. But this time I didn't carry anything for them. I started walking backward, not in regret, but in precision. Brick by brick, memory by memory. The first thing I did was check the lease on the original Elm & Co. storefront. The one on Main Street with the peeling brick facade and the warped wooden floors. I used to mop myself. It had changed hands when we expanded, rolled into a management shell company that Dad and I set up years ago. I still remembered the LLC name. It took 5 minutes to look it up. 10 minutes to realize the lease was expiring in 30 days. I drove out the next morning. The street hadn't changed much. Same hand-painted signs, same faded cafe on the corner, same couple arguing outside the laundromat. The shop windows were empty now, the new flagship was across town, but I could still see the tape marks where I used to hang promo flyers. I parked and went straight to the leasing office. Linda still worked there. She'd been the one to approve our first lease when I was 23 and too nervous to make eye contact. She blinked when she saw me. "Mara Ellison," she said, half smiling. "Now there's a name I haven't heard in a while." I told her I was interested in the space again. She raised an eyebrow. "I thought your sister was running things now." "She is," I said. Linda waited a moment. Then she leaned forward, lowered her voice. "Well, that space is about to be available again. Payment lapsed. I don't think they're keeping it." I signed the paperwork that same afternoon. I walked through the empty store. The lighting was poor. The floor still creaked near the back storage room. There were marks on the counter from when I spilled candle dye during our second product test. They never came out. I ran my hand across the wall where I used to write delivery notes in pencil light enough to erase, but dark enough to see if the sunlight hit just right. Next, I contacted our first lavender supplier, a family farm 2 counties north. I still had the daughter's number saved in an old folder. I called her. She remembered me. "Your sister's people stopped ordering from us last year," she said they were going global. I asked if they'd work with me again. She said yes. After that, I tracked down Martin, the printer, who ran our first ever batch of labels. I still remembered the layout error in batch 1. The scent name had bled too close to the edge. I drove to his warehouse. He hadn't changed a bit. "You want the old files?" he asked. "Nobody ever came back for those." I took them. By Friday, I had the lease, the supplier, the packaging, the original design files in the same barcode range we started with, all under my name. I didn't post about it, didn't announce a comeback. This wasn't a comeback. I wasn't building something new. I was rebuilding what never should have been abandoned. Not because I wanted the world to see it, but because I needed it to exist somewhere that wasn't buried under polish and press photos. They had the name. They had the followers. They had the packaging. But I had the scaffolding, the people, the smell of cedar oil that stuck to my coat in winter. That was enough. The first call came 3 days after I signed the lease. Dad's name lit up on my phone like it had so many times before, during the build-out, during supplier delays, during late-night margin checks, when we still did everything ourselves. I didn't answer. He called again the next day, left a voicemail this time. "Hey, Mara. Just wondering how you're doing. Haven't heard from you. Give me a call." I didn't. Instead, I drove to the shop and stood behind the old register. I ran a dry cloth across the wood, even though there was no dust yet. I rewired the back lights, replaced a broken drawer pull that had been loose since year 2. Things no one else would notice, but I did because I'd put them there. 2 more calls came that week, one from my mother. She never called. Her message was short. "Whatever this is, you're making things harder than they need to be." I let that sit. I didn't answer texts either. Chloe sent the first one. "What are you doing at the Main Street space?" No greeting, no sign of confusion, just a direct shot. It wasn't curiosity. It was fear. I didn't answer. Then came the letter, a clean PDF from their legal team addressed formally to my business address. It was a courtesy inquiry asking for clarification on whether my new activity constituted an attempt to commercially compete using overlapping brand assets. I printed it out and left it on the table while I drank my coffee. I read it again slowly, this time aloud, to see how it sounded. Then I replied. 1 page. Simple. The physical property at 118 Main Street, as well as product formulations, visual design templates, and original copy language were developed and filed under my name between 2016 and 2020. Any overlap results from your continued use of materials that predate current leadership. Please direct future communication to council. I mailed it. Certified, tracked. After that, the calls stopped for a few days. Then, Chloe showed up in person. I was restocking tea tins on the back wall when I heard the door open. She walked in like she'd been sent, clean lines, polished voice. "Mara," she said, "we need to talk." I stood, wiped my hands. "You're here now?" I asked. "After 2 years of talking for me?" She didn't answer that. She looked around the store. "You're rebuilding it. I'm remembering it," I said. She exhaled, frustrated or maybe just unsure. "Dad says you're trying to take it all down." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid I'd make people remember the version of the story where she wasn't there. "I'm not trying to take it down," I said. "I'm just taking back the parts you didn't know were real." She didn't respond. She left without touching anything. And I went back to shelving tins 1 row at a time. They didn't take me seriously. Not really. Even after I reopened the old store, even after I stocked the shelves with familiar shapes and scents, even after I stood behind the same counter they had once called too small town for a national brand. They thought I was making noise, symbolic protest, a message from the bitter sister who didn't move on. Maybe they expected me to lash out, demand a seat back at the table, but I wasn't interested in their table. I had already built the floor they put it on. I just needed them to remember that. The second legal letter came by mail, signed by an attorney I didn't recognize. It wasn't friendly. It accused me of infringing on intellectual property, product names, scent formulas, packaging layouts. They said my new store caused confusion with their current brand identity. It was dressed up in legal terms, but the message was simple. "You're trespassing on what we built." What they didn't realize was that I never left. I didn't panic. I didn't even get angry. I walked to the back office, opened the file drawer marked Legal, 2016, and pulled out the documents they forgot existed. There, it was a notarized agreement signed by my father and me listing every original formulation, every visual layout, every written phrase used in our first 3 years. Ownership mine. It wasn't just a creative folder, it was the foundation, and they never transferred it. Back then, Dad told me we didn't need to hire a lawyer. Said it was better if I held the original documents until we figure out how big this gets. We never followed up, and they never asked for the transfer. So I filed everything under my name, quietly, permanently. I put together a reply. 1 packet. Neat, thorough, annotated. I listed what I owned, the lavender and citrus blend we called Rainlight, the original Ritual Care tagline they still printed on boxes, the layout templates I created in PowerPoint when we couldn't afford a designer. I cited registration numbers, included timelines, then I added 1 sentence centered and bold. "You have 14 calendar days to discontinue use of the attached intellectual property. Failure to comply will constitute willful infringement under federal law." I sent it by courier. Certified. No email, no heads up. 4 days passed. Then 7. On the 9th day, a junior lawyer from their side called and asked if I'd consider a licensing agreement. Legacy partnership, he called it. Said they wanted to honor the roots. I said no. Politely. No explanation. Just no. Day 12. Chloe posted a video. She stood in a neutral-toned studio with soft music playing behind her. "We're entering a new chapter," she said. "A reimagined brand that reflects who we are now, not where we began." The caption was full of buzzwords, growth, forward, vision. But what I saw was something else: withdrawal. Over the next month, their packaging changed, the copy softened, the names disappeared. The labels got cleaner but emptier. One by one, the things I made stopped showing up in their feed. No one announced it. There were no headlines. But I knew what it meant. I didn't sue. I didn't go public. I didn't send a final message or leak a single file. I just watched as they erased what they once took quietly and completely, because they no longer had the right to hold it. I never wanted to destroy what they built. I only wanted them to stop building it on top of me. The rebrand happened quietly. No public apology, no announcement of rights transferred or names removed. Just new packaging, new language, a reshuffled website. Elma Studio became Studio Elma. The shelves looked cleaner, the copy sounded vaguer. The core faded. They moved on, and I let them. I didn't respond to the lawyer's final offer. I didn't check the trademark filings to see how much they had changed. I didn't walk past the flagship store again. I didn't need to. What mattered wasn't whether people knew what I did. It was that they couldn't pretend I hadn't done it. About a month later, a package arrived at the store. No return address. Inside was the black moleskin notebook I thought I lost in year 3, the one I filled with scent ratios, price projections, small sketches in the margins. On the inside cover in my handwriting was a line I wrote during a snowstorm when we couldn't afford a generator and worked by candlelight. If we ever forget how this started, we lose the right to say what it is. There was no note, but the postmark said Portland. I put the notebook in the drawer under the register. Not to keep it safe, just to keep it near. That spring, the shop filled slowly. A few locals remembered it. A college student wandered in looking for something for her mother. An older man recognized the smell and said, "Didn't this place used to carry that cedar soap?" I nodded. "We still do." He smiled, picked up a bar, held it to his nose. "Smells like the old days." I didn't explain. Didn't need to. I restocked the shelves, cleaned the back room, replanted the herb box near the window. I ordered another round of labels, same design. No logo this time. No tagline. One morning as I was opening up, a woman stood outside the door. She hesitated before coming in. She looked around, slowly touched the wooden counter, scanned the shelves like she was looking for something she couldn't name. After a while, she asked, "Is this new?" I smiled. "Not really." She nodded. "Bought a candle. Didn't ask for a bag." As she left, she paused and said, "It feels like something that remembers. And maybe that's all I ever wanted. Not credit, not revenge, not even recognition. Just a place where the version of the story I lived, the one I built, was still alive, untouched by edits. Something that remembered.